Solutions to the Dropout Crisis, addressing the dropout crisis one strategy at a time. Brought to you by the National Dropout Prevention Center Network with support from K-12 and Fuel Education and in partnership with Clemson Broadcast Productions. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome once again to Solutions. We're really pleased to have you join us here in Palm Springs, California. How awesome is that to be at the National Dropout Prevention Network Conference? We love having you join us and having an opportunity to attend a workshop that is being presented here, and we're going to bring it to you. And I am so happy to have with me as a co-host one of the NDPC fellows, my old friend. I don't know how far back we go, but it's a long way, Pat. It's right. Dr. Pat O'Connor from Kent State University. And so, Pat, it's great to have you back on Solutions. You've been a guest before, and now it's great to have you as a co-host.
It's really enjoyable to be involved in all the different ways. I'm looking forward to this session as well. You know, and working with you again, too. That's fun.
Oh, it's always fun.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of capacities that we worked together over the years in publications and all kinds of things. So Pat and I are the front row of the workshop. This is a place we like to be. So we're going to represent the audience today in talking to the presenters who have a very important topic today. Because basically, if you don't show up, you can't learn. And they're going to tell us ways that they have created a structure and an implementation of a process that will help school districts improve the attendance and all the good that comes out of that. So I am very pleased to introduce our two guests. And first we have Erica Peterson, who is, I'm going to read this, make sure I get the title right, Erica, is the National Education Manager for School Innovations and Achievements.
That's right.
And we welcome you to the program.
Thank you.
And then we have Gary Roten, who has implemented these processes we're going to learn about. And Gary is the Director of Student Services and Child Welfare at Verde's Unified School District in Paris, California. So welcome to Erica and Gary. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we like to get started right away because we all agree, I think we all agree that attendance is an important thing for schools. I just wanted to say one thing. Years ago at the center, we had a partnership with the National Basketball Association and a program called Stay in School.
Okay.
And the mentor was, attitude, attendance, and achievement. Right. And we were talking before the program today how we really feel like attendance should have come first. And I think you're going to tell us and show us why that's so important, so then the other things will flow from that.
Yes.
So, Erica, let's get started and kind of start learning about this process, and with Gary's assistance, seeing how a school district is putting it into practice and getting some pretty powerful results.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for having us. And you know, we also have a mantra. You know, we believe that to create a culture of achievement, which we're all focused on as educators, starts by creating a culture of showing up. And so it's through that we developed the work that we do in partnership with districts to improve student outcomes, again, with that same singular focus through a program that we have called the Achievement Initiative. And while it may be something where we sort of, in this room, all understand and focus and know how important attendance is to student success, I think it's just important for us all to sort of look at and kind of remember why this matters in terms of the focus and the work, which is the simple facts: absent kids have harder lives. And that sounds really simple, but the data has supported, and some of the research here, I'll share with you a few statistics, is that 83% of kids, when they're chronically absent in kindergarten and first grade, cannot read on level by third grade. And there's an unfortunate domino effect that happens with that, which is that kids who aren't on level by third grade are 4 times more likely to drop out. And then, of course, again, that next domino that falls, that kids who drop out are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated.
This is a really big point, because it is accumulative over the years, because the patterns are set early on about attending school. And if you're already behind, you'll never catch up unless there's some major interventions, but that usually does not occur. So we've got to start early on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really it. As simple as that sounds, And for myself, challenged me when I started really working in this area and understanding that as early as kinder and first grade, we can start to see where a student might be going off track. And so then it really does come down to, in those cases, it's usually also maybe a parent or a familial issue. And so it's larger than just kids, but at the end of the day, it's really just a simple fact that absent kids have harder lives.
So this is a symptom that something's wrong.
Right.
And so we know that. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's just the starting point, though, isn't it?
It is. And so it really moves into in terms of what we can accomplish. So I want to share with you, as we talk today, I'd like to talk about the work and the methodology and how we drive to results, and Gary's going to share really as a practitioner the results at his district. But again, systemic problems require enterprise solutions, and as educators, we're all focused on kids having successful outcomes. And so how do we quantify that? So I want to start with a result, if you will, in terms of what we've been able to help districts drive to when we implement this methodology, and then I'll walk everyone through the methodology, and then we can talk about what it looks like.
Okay, that sounds good.
So really it is possible to achieve the extraordinary. And so if we talk about student success, I use graduation rates. So of course we could use college admissions, we could use GPA, all kinds of things. But I think we can all agree, regardless of what state we're in, that graduation, as educators, we sort of give ourselves that virtual, right, the across the table high five come the end of June, if kids make it across the stage. So when we talk about the achievement gap and differences in student outcomes, well, this is it pictorially.
Okay.
So this comes from the Federal Department of Education, and this is graduation rates for white students as represented by that dark gray bar, and that's 87%. And when we look at our significant ethnic subgroups, African Americans nationally graduate on average at about 73%. 76% is the graduation rate for Hispanic or Latino students, and 70% for our American Indian students. And the power of what's possible is when we look at, and so the data set that I'm going to share with you here is over 160,000 students, 20 plus districts that have been committed to this methodology of the Achievement Initiative for at least 3 to 4 years. We've been able to help them raise and drive to when we talk about closing the achievement gap and what's possible. And it starts with something as simple as showing up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is really sort of the why it matters, right? And when we talk about, well, why should the focus be about attendance? And yes, we all sort of know attendance is important, but here's attendance, and have we thought about it this way in terms of the way it mediates and impacts student outcomes? Because all of these districts, of course, were focused on things like Chromebooks or having rigorous engagement and professional development. We're all doing those things in education, but focusing singularly, or at least making that in that top 3 of like the 3 A's that you spoke about, and if you lead with attendance, this is what's possible.
So this, are we reading this right, Pat? That it went from
impressive.
the 73 in just 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, these are the results that we've helped them drive to in terms of, and we'll talk about, and Gary will share as we go, what the graduation and dropout rates for Verde Unified have been also.
Yeah.
So your district was part of these 23, Gary?
Yes,
Yeah.
and what is interesting about this is part of California's funding system is based on those subgroups. The higher percentage, the more money you receive from the state of California per kid. So
Well, this is true.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the funding's there. So certainly the impact on what you do is reaching achievement, closing that gap. It should be happening.
This is a win-win.
It could be.
Absolutely. So I think it's a great sort of framework, right, in terms of understanding why this matters and what's so important and what's possible, And so that's really where we kind of look at, it's around time on task and how we drive to that. So let me walk you through the framework and the methodology of the Achievement Initiative. And it was really designed around 2 critical skills, leadership and management. And so we use Kouzes and Posner's model of leadership. And what they've proven is that there's 5 critical leadership practices. And they include inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, encouraging the heart, and modeling the way. And for us, where this business and education partnership works so well is because we're able to take these types of business practices and apply them in an education setting through our continuous improvement model. And so it's about having people, processes, measurement, oversight, and communication. Because what we know is that the degree to which one pays attention to those 5 pieces then is directly related to how successful someone will be in terms of driving to outcomes. And so these concepts that we built, this is the methodology in which we built the Achievement Initiative on. And so the fact that it works so well, and where I shared with you the outcomes in terms of achievement, then is not by guess and by golly, it's no surprise, because these are the results that we're driving to.
Okay.
So there's 5 parts to the foundation of our program, and it starts with some supports that we have through a program called Attention to Attendance. And it's the foundation, and when we talk about, it starts with kind of pushing out, when you talk about inspiring a shared vision, then it really starts with messaging. And so we start by pushing out and messaging around that simple mantra. To create a culture of achievement starts with creating a culture of showing up. And so we're constantly talking about showing up and why showing up matters. And at the same time, we're implementing a new process in place in terms of different interventions across school sites and across the district to ensure that there's timely and consistent communication with families if there are actual attendance issues with students. And this is where we excel because we're able to kind of systematize and scale processes. Our software then allows that to all happen uniformly across the district. And then we make it really easy in terms of then providing the right information in front of the right people at the right time. So that's where we see measurement. This idea that enabling others to act means that they have that information that they need to make decisions. And so data-informed decision-making, right, is a term we all hear, but really it's about then do you have access to the right information at the right time, because it's going to drive what it is that you do. So that's part of this and why it works so well, because these things are interconnected, and that's why we represent this as that sort of puzzle piece. And you can take this sort of methodology and framework then and apply it to anything that you want to improve. For us, it just happens to be attendance because it's just that keystone piece. You know, we know it's that saying of success in life, 80% is attributed to just showing up.
And just about everything.
Yes, absolutely. And so enabling others to act and encouraging the heart in terms of recognizing the work, recognizing the outcomes, and that when we're making improvement, not only for students, but for families, for recognition, and for our staffs and our constituencies in our district. Because attendance is a systemic problem. And so solutions have to be enterprise solutions. And so recognizing, acknowledging those of us who are rolling up our sleeves, the team that Gary has, and he'll share some of the recognition and rewards that we do. But that's what makes this model so successful, but also scalable, and then able to drive to those outcomes.
So it's the human element of the participants in any level of the process. They care about what they're doing.
Right.
They share the vision.
Absolutely.
They want to make it happen, and they see their roles.
Right.
And it's not just this cold process. I like to see that word heart there. I just have to say.
Yeah.
Well, it also includes a lot of different aspects, because this is a multifaceted problem.
Exactly.
Which require multifaceted solutions.
Exactly.
And there they are.
We see a lot of one-off solutions, and they have limited success.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so it really is then, as simple as it sounds, things like inspiring a shared vision, but do people know what's important to you? And as school leaders, are you talking about attendance, or is that just somebody down the hall or at the central office who handles that?
Exactly.
And
that is a really good point. I don't have anything to do with that. I'm just showing up and
That's
doing my
exactly
job.
right, yes.
And
Right.
so-and-so, he's supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, you have to show people how they're a part of that shared vision.
That's
You keep that vision to yourself, you're not
Yeah.
going anywhere
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
But you need to learn how to communicate it.
Yes.
So
This
that's
is
part
great.
of what we do.
Yeah.
So what does that look like then in practice is we actually are messaging out from the superintendent all the way across down the organization sending communications out, again, with this very simple message. Mom, dad, whoever the audience is, if you do one thing to help your child be successful, show up, get them to school every time. And as simple as that sounds, to assume that staff, teachers, administrators, principals, counselors know that that's what matters to you, it's often not on any type of messaging when I look at district websites or what kind of communications, how folks communicate out, and that's what modeling is, right? It's around getting that message out, but being also consistent and with rigor and fidelity.
So when you, for example, were to take a look at a school district's website and spend some time on it, you can get a sense for all of this just by what you're seeing.
We do, absolutely. Because I look at it not knowing anything, just like a parent might be if I were moving into your community. I look at your website and I say, what does it tell me about you and what matters to you?
Did you encounter any surprises when they reviewed your materials?
Oh, yes, a great deal. In fact, the measurement portion of this initiative is a real eye-opener. It's a good starting point.
And we deliver a full multimedia package as part of that to districts so that we also don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel. So we provide everybody with messaging, again, because we want it to be clear and consistent across one campus to another, that everyone is saying the same thing. Show up, it matters. We're paying attention.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty basic one to kind of start off with, but I imagine, and Gary will probably talk about this more, but each of these districts that you have been involved with this process have evolved to create a message for their community that may differ from, it's not a canned thing at all.
No,
it's
certainly
totally something that you've got a simple message, and how from every level and every personnel, how do we convey that simple message? Yeah.
And it does transcend. It can be simple, and it actually can be repeated over and over again because, again, absences, there may be different drivers, but what we're driving to in terms of outcome, show up, is the same. Yeah. So a district maybe that is in a wealthier community, and what they have is what I call the problem of privilege. And so their kids are still absent, and maybe it's because we took the vacation to Disney or wherever. Right, we're here in Southern California, so that seems like an appropriate reference. But it's no different than a district that maybe has a high needs population and students are missing for other reasons. But again, that mantra, show up, it's ubiquitous.
And it's obviously that one of the audiences for this is the family, or the parents, or the caregivers.
Yeah, certainly.
They play a key role. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
But when we look at young families too, again, assuming that people understand that expectation is an error that many districts make. I look at, we've seen in the research and the data, I started with that statistic around kindergartners and first graders.
Yes.
Well, oftentimes those are young parents. And so they may not be far out of high school themselves, and they may have just really no understanding of the consequences and the impact that not going to school has. So assuming that they know is an error oftentimes that schools make. And so it's one of those things where then we have an opportunity to educate and to really engage with parents early on, and in some of those first places like kindergarten registration. And that's where that messaging, again, across the organization, all layers. I've sat at back to school night. Teachers will tell me about the syllabus and the curriculum and what's coming up, and yet they never tell me something as simple as attend. Make sure your child's here every day.
So it's really like you're putting this lens, we see a lens across everybody in the school district's eyes, and hopefully the community as well, that this is an important thing. And from your perspective, wherever you are in the organization, you want to show your syllabus, your curriculum, and field trips, or whatever, disciplinary policies, or all those different things that are related, but also put it on those lens for showing up.
Right.
And what does that mean from you?
Right.
So that's really, and that's a new thing. I mean, I think that's a really, I love it when we bring in solutions here, something that everybody can do.
Yes.
Everybody can do. And, we're going to see how when it's done through this process, the results, well, we've already seen the results.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have got to be salivating at this point. To
Yeah.
say, I want to know, okay,
Yeah.
okay, keep going.
Let's go
So,
into
yes,
it.
yeah.
So, I mean, again, I think we know, but this just to really understand, again, when we talk about an enterprise, that attendance is a systemic problem, that's a challenging thing. And I talked about challenging the process. So I want to challenge people's beliefs and thinking. And so these are just a few of the ways that if you think attendance, not my job, I just show up, that is what you said. But are you working in the business side of the house? And so is enrollment how you're funded? You should care about attendance, right?
Oh, wow, that's do I have to care about that?
Right?
Please, let me
Yeah.
just stay in my office here and get on my little computer here.
So this really kind of is just illustrative again. We've kind of talked to this, but again, it's across all levels of the organization, and that's why we really think that attendance and the attendance crisis is a systemic problem, and so that's why one-offs don't really work and why they don't make sense. But that's what we see a lot of schools doing, are these kind of one-off solutions. And so when we talk about data, then that's also a really critical element. And that's something that probably one of the largest places we also see as a struggle for districts. So it really is around using data to inform action. Districts are drowning in numbers.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we have student information systems or some kind of central repository where we put all kinds of data
Right,
points,
okay.
whether course schedules, teacher grades, all
Yeah.
those different things, test scores. And so for practitioners, the things that we have to recognize is that poor attendance doesn't have to be a guessing game. That if we stop down, we can make a significant difference if we take the time to look at data, disaggregate it. So if we talk about things like an attendance ratio, some states call that average daily
Yeah,
attendance,
yeah.
all of those things. That's a great benchmark, but it can mask all
Yes,
sorts of
yes,
patterns and
yeah.
trends, right? And so again, making sure that we're giving comparative analysis and giving that to the right people. So are your front office staff, who maybe are the first people that parents see, do they know what the attendance is for the school? Not just the daily attendance that they're inputting, but do they know what the percentage is? And then how they compare maybe to the school across town they would find themselves analogous to. And so having them have comparative analysis so that you can really stop down and sort of, I call it sort of the peeling back of the layers of the onion. Is a really critical piece. And so these are some higher order questions that people can kind of ask themselves that are listening to us today. What are the expectations and how are we communicating that to our constituencies, both internally, our staff, our teams, our teachers, as well as externally, our community partners, our parents and families? What are our processes? Why are we doing what we're doing? Is it because it's always what we've done? Or should we be doing things differently? So we always say if your process isn't broken, then you should break it. And then reinvent it, right? And then talking about what you can accomplish, because I see these lofty goals of ADA will improve by 1% or 2%. All things being equal, but all things aren't equal across all schools. So, yeah.
Well, what I wonder here is, we have the attendance for every student, just attendance, period.
Yeah.
No disaggregation, just attendance.
That's right.
And that's one number that every school has. But I was talking earlier about this with Gary, about a school visit in a state we won't mention and a school we won't mention. But there was an issue with attendance at this school, middle school. And it was terrible at the beginning. They took attendance first period. It was terrible. Well, the principal was about to retire. So he figured out a way to take care of that particular issue by taking attendance in third period. And because of the particular community that was there, they were getting to school, but not till third period. So that to me tells me, well, that's a different scenario in that school because of the community that it was in. That school was, we'll get there eventually. I'm going to go, but I'm just late every day. So his attendance numbers improved, and the district got off his back.
Right.
So I took care of that problem. No, it didn't.
Right.
And so is there a way to kind of, and sometimes, there's another example, and this may have been in some discussions we've had earlier, that it's the chemistry teacher who has nobody in this class, and the rest of the day the students are going to class. So these getting down to those kind of issues.
Right.
There might be some, it's very interesting then, and that teaches you a lot in your setting.
Yes.
What issues are and then what you do about it.
Right.
But is that part of this as well, or do we
It
just,
is.
just go for the whole thing? They're there or they're not there?
No, because all of those things, exactly what you said, which is you can have a high attendance rate, 97, 98%, and still have a 34% chronic absenteeism in kindergarten.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Because it's a mask. And so
Yeah.
it's until you disaggregate
Yeah.
the data, until you peel back enough layers to say, what are my drivers?
Yeah.
You can't even begin to have prescriptive solutions.
Yeah.
Because you actually don't know what the problem is. And
Yeah.
with just moving attendance, taking from first to third period, yeah. Yeah.
That was
Right.
interesting.
And we hear so much about the achievement gap, and I appreciated the data that you just shared, and your comment about in California, funding is related to changing that achievement gap by subgroups.
Absolutely.
And as a national organization, do you find similar trends around the country that other states also
Yeah.
are concerned about raising
Yeah.
achievement gap numbers?
Absolutely.
So
Oh,
it's not just
absolutely.
California then?
No, certainly, right? I mean, as educators,
Oh, yeah.
we all care about kids, right? You know, our
Right.
ultimate goal, getting them across the stage.
Right.
And, you know, Oregon and other states have some of the highest chronic absentee rates, so it's certainly not a California-only
yeah.
problem. And, you know, a few years ago, the White House launched their initiative. So nationally, we have an attendance crisis. Nationally, this is part of what's holding back student outcomes across the nation in terms of student performance. And we do see some commonalities and patterns and trends across the data. And so we often, Garrett and I look for his district, but what we see are some trend lines around, again, when you break out absences by grade level,
Right.
by subgroup, free and reduced, or looking at sort of those socioeconomic indicators, they're all going to paint a different picture. You have to be looking at all of those things.
That's fascinating.
Because it's what they'll do is, all states have a funding model, and they all are taking a look at those subgroups and those achievement gaps. The difference is they don't fund the same per student, and that's where you'll find the difference. You know, some states may fund 20% more than another state does per student. So that's why you're still seeing the difficulties in the achievement gap.
And in your particular district, were you able to see some significant changes relative to that achievement gap?
When the funding model changed in California, went to the LCAP process, yeah, because we had an opportunity to design goals and be funded for those goals, and it's making a huge difference.
A state funding support?
Yeah. So what I've pulled up here is just kind of outlining some of the kind of key pieces for Verde and what they have put in place in terms of operationalizing this
Right.
and what this
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's what we did. We hired credentialed teachers to be we put together an attendance team
Okay.
from the district office level. And we hired credentialed teachers because we thought credentialed teachers understood what was required of a student in a classroom, why it was important to be in that classroom every day. We thought they had a better understanding of how to communicate with parents, especially when you're talking about grades and getting to school. So we went to the ranks and actually hired probably some of the best teachers in the district because they were interested in what we were going to
Right.
try to
Good
accomplish.
idea.
And so we put together these people, and we just did some amazing things, and they're still doing some amazing things with them.
Gary, just excuse me. The credentialed teachers, is that a full-time job to do this, or are they as part of their?
That's a full-time job for them, and they're on the regular teacher's salary scale.
Okay.
But you know what we did? When I first came into Val Verde in 2010 in this job, there wasn't data there for attendance. I mean, like Erica said earlier, there's plenty of data, but how do you pull it out? What do you look for? So that's where we started, and we looked at a plan. You know, we used that achievement process to really design what we were going to do in Val Verde, and went out to accomplish that. Because originally, as in most districts, I would imagine across the nation, principals are in charge of attendance. You know, that's your go-to people. That's where it starts at. But if you've ever been a principal, then you understand that when you get on campus in the morning, that is not your first job. You know, you're worrying about, I'm short 2 subs today. Johnny's mom's outside the door because she's upset because she wanted him to play the clarinet, and instead he's on a drum, or whatever fire's going on that
Yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah.
So nobody thinks about attendance. So when you look at attendance, there's a lot of hands in the pot. And if you're going to get accurate data, you have to find a way to make sure that you're starting to take some of those hands out in order to clarify collecting the data to get the data that you need to look at. With this whole process here that we started, it's boots on the ground for us because you can't do attendance from a desk. You really have to have people that are willing to get out in the community, go to the homes. You have people who make phone calls, but you got to have people that get out there. We took the attendance responsibility away from principals because, you know, part of it, the first 3 absences, you know, they do SARTs. School attendance review team comes in, or that's supposed to be the principal's job, but it wasn't getting done because they're busy, not because they're not good principals. So we went to that and put that in the hands of these, at that time it was 4 people, and so they started doing every one of those district-wide, every school in the district, all 22 schools. So it's what makes the change because you have, everybody is on point with the idea, and I mean, we had to go from across all the unions to make sure they understood the goal of what we were doing with attendance, what we wanted to accomplish, because you have classified people that are your attendance techs, teachers take attendance, but the principal's job still was to make sure teachers take attendance because that's where it starts. You know,
Well, that really gives you a dedicated leadership team, those credentialed teachers, to carry the ball with this and advocate for it, and all the pieces and parts that have to be connected.
right, so, you know, our goal was to make attendance a priority in our district.
Right.
It should be in every district, but unfortunately that's not the case. We knew we had to make it that. So principals, it became part of their evaluation. They sit down with the superintendent once a month and they have to talk about their attendance. He pulls out the data. And we went with a company like School Innovations and Achievement because those attendance techs were responsible for sending out letters on absences. So you got 22 schools, you got 22 employees right there that, or maybe more at each school, that are touching attendance. And it's like anywhere else. You have some really good employees, some okay, and then you got some that are just there for a paycheck, right? So we had to unify that process. So these credentialed teachers on this attendance team also are responsible for working with the attendance techs. They hold monthly meetings with them, make sure everybody's on the same page. And then you have, you know, so when you look at how it's spread out, you know, you got a district of 22,000. So I don't know how many teachers we got, 3,000, whatever it might be. There's your first touch with attendance. You know, then your attendance techs and so forth, and it goes on down. So, but what we got from SINA, because I had to have a starting point, was their process. They talked to me about the achievement process, and then they started talking about data. And you're right, it wasn't a canned program because there were some specific things that I was looking for. And so I met with their IT people and sat down and we talked about what I wanted to achieve, and then it started happening. Because anytime you're dealing with attendance or with any program that a district may purchase, you can purchase a program, it can sit on the shelf. You know, everybody gets excited about it for 1 year and then nothing happens. But we purchased a partnership, and that was the important part about it. It wasn't just, it's not a program, it's a partnership. And they're there every step of the way for me. Any kind of data I ask for, it's there. All my principals have it on their desktops, so they can, you know, making that a priority, they can look at where their risks are at in attendance on a daily basis. Again, this team, they do all the home visits. They also teach Parent Project. And Parent Project, we made it part of our SARB process. In California, we have the SARB process, the School Attendance Review Board, that after a student has missed 18 days or 10% of the school year, they're referred to the SARB process. And then at that process, we try to do things for them that's going to improve their attendance at school. And one of those is Parent Project. And we help parents with the difficulties they face at either at home, getting kids ready for school, with homework, whatever's involved in it. And the other thing that we also do with that is that we've also hired MFTs that work out of my department. They come up to 20 MFTs now for the other side of the attendance issue, which has to do with the family issues, things that are happening at home. And through the STAR process, we'll assign them an MFT.
And just to tell our audience, MFT.
It's a marriage family therapist.
Oh,
And
okay.
they deal with that other side of why
That's a-
students don't come to school.
That's excellent.
And the other thing we implemented, of course, was a Saturday school. I think if you're in California anyway, because of the way you can recoup attendance, you can recoup ADA for those days that are missed, a child missed, except for a suspension. So everybody should have a Saturday school in California because it can recoup a lot of money. We use our STEAM program for that, and a lot of hands-on, fun things to do on Saturday. Bring all those kids in at K through 12.
Yeah.
And we're always collaborating with the school sites. Everything is on the same page. Everybody's in tune with what we're trying to accomplish. They know the goals. And because we expect a lot from our school sites, the money that we recoup every year, we take a percentage of that and we give it back to the principals. At the retreat every year when all the principals get together for the school year starts, we hand out those big Price is Right checks, with so much money for each of them that they, additional to their budget, that they can do whatever they want with
Let's
it.
talk about money for a minute.
Sure.
Because the results that you have achieved have brought a significant number of dollars
Yes.
into your district. This process, 8 credentialed teachers,
Right.
all the way down,
Right.
costs lots of money, not to mention the partnership issues where you're putting some money. You have made a major commitment on attendance. And and I know people out there are going to say, well, we don't have the kind of money to hire credentialed teachers, we don't have to do all these different things. We do not have that money. Gary, tell them what kind of a difference the increased attendance has in the funding that comes in, naturally comes into your district.
Well, the first step in this process is once you have a plan and you know what you want to accomplish, is you have to get the decision makers on your side. And a good place to start is with the business superintendent, your school board, your superintendent. And the way that I approached that was I took we looked at attendance for every day for the entire school year. And we put the amount of money, ADA, we lost each day on attendance. And so like for the first semester, it was $2.4 million. Second semester gets a little tougher for you. The absences go up. It was, I don't know, 4 million and something. But altogether, it was almost $7 million we were losing a year in absences. And we're not talking about the chronic absenteeism because that's a very small percentage, like 5% for our district. But you're looking at the excessive excused absences. That other 95% of your student population who parents don't understand that you should be at school every day. I'll take them out early, they're going to a dentist appointment. Oh, okay, it's already 1 o'clock, I'm just going to keep them home the rest of the day. Or Johnny's got a cough or got a cold. We even started at pre-K, and even though they're not 6 years old, and in California it's 6 to 18, because you got to be in school. But we looked at it this way: pre-K is taking a seat in school, and we know that poor attendance is a pattern. And it exists throughout the entire family of that particular student. We can see that Johnny, who's now 17, has had attendance issues his entire school career. So we need to break that cycle. So you have to start young, and we start at pre-K. We start, I hate to say hounding them, but we start communicating with them right off the bat, getting them to understand, getting parents to understand why it's important. And we go back to the third grade, reading by third grade initiative, which, by the way, is one of our board's goals.
Okay.
So you're looking at pre-K to third grade, you got to get those kids on track. That's a tremendous amount of learning in those first 3-4 years. So you really have to get parents to understand that every day is vital. Because like Erica said, and like studies have shown, if you're reading on third grade level, good chance you're probably going to graduate and pursue higher education.
We've done a lot of work over the years relative to reading and literacy. And one of the key points to that is in grades K through 3, you learn to read. After that, you read to learn.
There you go.
So if you haven't learned to read by 3rd grade, it's going to be a struggle.
Absolutely.
So I see two big things here and two significant audiences for this message in your school districts, folks out there who are interested in focusing on attendance. One is the increased attendance is going to provide, this is a business office, increased funding and the superintendent, more money.
Right.
Okay, that's a big thing. So we can do all the wonderful things that we want to do for these children. And the second is to the school board. If that is the mission, by 3rd grade, we're going to have our kids reading on grade level. As a school board and wanting policies for that, they're going to be very supportive of enabling that to happen as well. So are there other audiences? Well, of course, teachers, everybody wants kids to do well, you know,
It's
really.
every audience in my mind. I mean, how do we know how many buses to run if we don't pay attention to attendance? So
Yeah.
it hits every department.
It does hit every time, but they're the decision makers,
Yeah.
I think,
Well-
the ones with the purse and the ones at the school board. And so that is where you want to make your case, I think, to start. I think everybody will get on board, but
Yes.
but in order to enable our wishes to come true, we need money.
Right.
And we need in educational goals, so school board support.
Right, and you know, we don't want to focus on money, but the reality of it is,
reality.
it's needed, and it allows us to do the things in our schools that make kids want to come to school.
Yeah.
You know, we have things for them,
Yeah.
so it does close that gap
Yeah.
on getting kids to school. But the real key to it is, though, is your graduation rates. Because if you got kids that are doing well in school, your graduation rates are going to go up.
And
You know,
that's
they
everybody's
come to
interest.
school,
Yeah.
and you know, we're measured as schools on so many levels, and academics are a large part of that. And overall, schools do a really good job in this country, regardless of what data might say or what legislation may tell you, because we educate everybody. You know, we don't just have the cream of the crop. I mean, we're across the board. So we do a fantastic job with what we do with that. And, you know, for example, if you want to look at this slide here, and Eric will probably talk some about it, is that what makes that happen is communicating with parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have to understand why curriculum is important, why it's important to be there every day, and they got to understand what's going on in their schools, and this does that for us.
Yeah, sort of a central tenet for us is that idea of ubiquity, of being perceived, being everywhere at all the time. And what you were talking about in terms of, well, how do you get to 8 teachers on this team? How do you get to 20 plus MFTs on staff? Where do you start? Well, part of it is that idea of building capacity, and so some of that is in some of these ways in which we communicate. So we do have some tools and some efficiencies that we put in place for districts. And so with Verde, with 20,000 kids, on just the intervention side, we support them with over 20,000 communication touches to their families.
Yeah.
And we just kind of broke it out so people could kind of see how that looks and what some of those kind of touch points are, right? But ultimately, you can't over communicate this simple message. And so you might think, well, but if we just focus on the kids that have some of the worst attendance, we're only talking to a few people. But when you're really doing this, you're talking to everybody. And so actually, last year we did about 69,000 because we also did the prevention, not just the intervention, but that sort of proactive in front of parent messaging that we support the district with. So Gary can't be everywhere at once. And even 8 teachers, even though that's an impressive team, can't be everywhere at once. But this gives their families and their constituencies the appearance of we're paying attention, we notice,
The
we care.
messages that go out, you know, whether it's preventive or the once a year thing, you're trying to show a school climate or a district, not just school, the district climate that's a positive thing. What's the message that you send out to make that climate welcoming, say, and also one that reinforces the value of being in school? What is the message? Is it tailored to your district? Who writes the message? I mean, I'm just curious, because that might be the first thing that the preschool mom gets about the value of coming to school.
Well, for the attendance letters, we actually work with SINA in that process, and also what our county SAR board request as far as when we're addressing students with excessive absence. So we include some of those things that are required by law. Actually, to tell you the truth, the letter for for excessive absences, sometimes it might come across a little bit harsh for parents, but it is a wake-up call. And the amazing thing about it is probably 90% of the people that get that first letter make a change.
Oh.
You can correct your problem fairly early
that's good to
when
know.
you're addressing it. So that's real positive. Even though the letter may not be real positive, but it sends a message that
Well, I
says,
gotta-
hey, your kid's got to be at school.
It's a realistic question now here, because I have a grandson who kept a lot of things in his backpack. And so how, in the letter from the teacher never reached the intended
Exactly.
recipient.
Right.
So how do you, because a lot of these kids who are getting, oh, you got one of those letters? Well, I'm not making it in my house. How do you definitely get letters to the parents?
Well, the first thing, we don't send them home with kids. We
That's
learned
the
that
point,
no,
yes.
yeah, we
Well,
don't do
that was
that.
easy to figure out, yeah.
Well, we do mail them out.
Yeah.
And
we support them across different modalities. So with some of the software supports that we've put in place, I mean, we're communicating by email. We provide messaging for robo or auto dialer systems for our schools. So we give them,
Definitely,
yeah, absolutely. And the website messaging. When you were talking about some of those younger parents, again, we provide them with things for their kindergarten registration packets. So we insert across the various levels in which you would have engagement with those families, depending on their what the attendance issue is and what the grade level is. You know, we're messaging out college and career readiness messages and supporting Verde on that mission as well. And so that's going to all their secondary students. But in that case, we're not just communicating with the parent, but also the student who's starting to make some decisions about what they want for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, what sorts of experiences have you had with parents who maybe have increased their child's attendance and have found the value of coming to school that perhaps maybe they were unaware before? Could you share a little bit about what sorts of results from the parents that you've experienced?
well, it's huge. I mean, we went from 93% attendance district-wide to 97 this last year, 97%. And that's for a district that does not have transportation. We don't have school buses for 22,000 kids in a social, economically challenged community. In fact, Val Verde was always known as, you know, the district of those kids, you know, because we had a lot of subgroups that were challenged. And so we always thought, no, those aren't those kids. These are, you know, you have to take the obstacles out of doing anything to this magnitude, you know, and especially with attendance. You have to remove obstacles. And everywhere I go and speak, you know, people always talk about, well, transportation's an issue. It's only an issue if you make it one. Our kids don't have it, but they get to school. And it's just because, well, like I said, we got boots on the ground. Our community cares. You know, there's no reason why a kid's hanging out at the mall or the convenience store at 10 o'clock and nobody's calling the school saying, hey, what, I got kids here.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to work with your community also. You know, they get the little sticker that, hey, call us. You know, if you got kids hanging out at your school, and they do, they call us. And, you know, the attendance enforcement team goes out there and brings them in. And
So how do they regularly get to school? I mean, are they in neighborhood schools where they walk, or parents drop them off?
We try to do neighborhood schools, but obviously in a district of our size, that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
But we do work with students that attend SARB. We'll give them the Riverside Transit Agency bus pass,
Okay.
so they can use the city bus. The city bus also runs some routes specific for the school district.
Well, there's a partnership with the community.
Right,
then.
and that's what
this
it
is
takes,
why It's a
absolutely.
systemic thing. I mean, that's extraordinary to increase your your attendance rate graduation rate, but the attendance, to improve your attendance rate to the degree that in a district where there are no school buses, these kids are coming to school.
Right.
If that isn't a message for people out there, I don't know what is, you know, because we're really getting the message here that people are finding ways to get to school because they value it. And so we
One, and it's what
salute
every
you for
district
this.
needs
Yeah.
to do, is they need to make attendance a department.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have, you know, all the ed services department, and you have the business department. You need an attendance department, and that's what we've basically done at Val Verde. We have an attendance department made up of probably 30 employees, And because this is not a one-man job.
No,
This
no.
isn't a five-man job. This is a everyday, boots-on-the-ground job. And that's what it takes to improve attendance in your district. And you have to remember, this is where it starts. Everything else that your district may earn and students may achieve from that point starts with attendance. So why isn't it one of the most important departments in your district?
Is this department under you as Student Services
It
Director?
is. It falls under Student Services. Also, I have registration, so we can make that contact, as Erica was saying earlier, with those kids when they're coming in.
Yes.
Give them the information.
Perfect alignment
Yeah.
there.
But that's how it has to be. I mean, we even have a close working relationship with the special ed department. Because a lot of kids who come in, we have a large population of special needs students, and they have attendance issues. So we work closely with that department, and it's just, if you're not working together, you're not collaborating, communicating, you're not following something like the achievement process, it's tough to accomplish these goals. But once you start to accomplish them and you can sell your leadership on why it's important, then you can earn yourself the kind of money that will allow you to do the things you want to do with that department. For example, last year, through 2017, we recouped a little over $6.5 million my department did for the district.
Yeah.
And that's general fund money.
Yeah, and this is going to help pay for a service or a way of looking at things that's obviously key
Right.
to success. If you're not dealing with the attendance issues, you're not dealing with dropout prevention
Right.
or school success for all students. And I'm
Right.
hearing that message too,
Right.
aren't you, Pat? It's
Absolutely.
not just what we're thinking of here at this conference, but all students would benefit from the value of school. And it's kind of like, it's a climate in the community that this is important.
Right.
I find value in what you're saying from the continuous improvement
Yes, exactly.
kind of paradigm. What you just shared, I believe, Gary, are best practices. And those best practices can be shared with others, so others can replicate the success that you've had if they invest the way you have and they follow the path and they
Right.
have everybody engaged. So
This
it's good
is
to
what
have some best
continue-
practices.
it looks like.
And I imagine that's something that you all are sharing with. Or do
Absolutely.
you have similar results in other
Yeah, we
districts
do.
around the country?
We absolutely do. And our team goes out to every district that we partner with, and we're working and supporting the staff, because this didn't start, Verde didn't start at 90. Well, our
Right.
chart here is
Right.
91%.
Yeah.
What was your
Right.
graduate in 2010? Wasn't it like 70?
Yeah, it was like 78.
Percent?
73, I think it was.
73?
Yeah.
Okay.
73
Yeah.
to this?
When you talk about a continuous improvement model, this is what that looks like.
Right.
And what you
Right,
don't see is where
absolutely.
we
That's it.
started.
Yeah.
But this is what you can drive to when you have that process and methodology and supports, and then you can start implementing those boots on the ground to execute on those things, and that's the synergy that allows this. And so what's amazing to me, I'm bragging on you, right, is looking what the team at Verde has accomplished. I mean, they're above state average, they're one of the top performing, and again, these were, as Gary says, perceptually before, those kids.
Yeah.
But that's where we know attendance is an educational equalizer, because those kids can achieve.
Right.
And we look at what their dropout rate is, it's
Yeah.
next
yeah.
to nothing.
It's the foundation. We talked earlier about the attitude, attendance, and achievement, and that
Right.
attendance should be first.
Yes.
I think you've made that case today.
Yeah.
And it's the foundation for all the wonderful things that we can do, all the different solutions that the National Dropout Prevention Center advocates. When they're there, they can benefit
Right.
from the mentoring program, from the service learning program, from the career tech, for all the different things, the early literacy program. But they've got to be there.
Right.
Right.
And I just think this is a marvelous proactive approach
Right.
to making sure the students are there in order to learn. And then over to you educators and
Right.
your communities to continue that process with students who are actually there.
Right. You've got to
Yeah.
have a good foundation to build the house on, right, as they say.
And it's important, too, to recognize the efficiency that you're finding and how you're making valuable use of the resources.
Right.
Right.
Talk about money a little bit. People want to ensure that their resources are being used wisely and efficiently.
Sure.
And that's a definite plus for all of us.
Absolutely. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, that's fine.
some of the additional results that you've had, you can talk to in
Yeah.
terms of, you've mentioned a few of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll tell you a little story. 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I think it's actually been when I first took over this job, I had one attendance specialist at that time, and I said, let's go out and do some home visits, get a kind of an idea of what we're dealing with. And I've been in this district 22 years, but as an administrator, as a principal, you rarely look outside your school. So we get in the car and we drive out to an unincorporated area of Riverside County, which is part of our district, and we pull up to a pretty run-down home, long dirt driveway, and they had a, like a farmer's fence, it's like some barbed wire and a pole. So we open it up and we drive up there and we get close to the house. There is a horse standing on the porch.
Okay.
Tells you
horse.
where you're at, yeah.
So we walk up to the porch. He's just staring at us, and the attendance specialist at that time looked at me and says, "We've got a real uphill climb ahead of us." So, but that. Get out in your community. You'll be surprised.
Yeah.
We don't go home with our kids.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, because if they did, from teachers down to classified employees, what a wake-up call that is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You don't go home with them. And if you did, you'd see, gee, why do we have these challenges?
Yeah.
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 You asked about parents and, well, what do parents say? And I think that's it, is really, for me, I don't get as much of that interaction with the families, but I hear from principals and administrators. And two things that have always stood out to me is a story that a principal related where he said, I don't want to ever have this conversation again, where he relayed to me a story he had with a parent who came in and he had to tell the parent that his child was not going to be graduating on time.
Right.
And so that parent stood across the desk and said, how is this the first time I'm hearing about this?
No kidding.
And he said, I never want to have that conversation again. So the other thing that a lot of times is when you have that process in place, rigor, consistency, whatever it looks like and how you operationalize it, but ultimately that's what you're getting to. And so they may not all say thank you, but a lot of them do. As far as families, thank you for making me aware. As a second kids in high school, you may not know that they're ditching or things like that. So it is that type of thing. But I think what parents take away is that you care. And that's what this is about, is that show up, because we're as committed to your child's success as you are as a parent.
As a university professor that works with a lot of teachers, this is something teachers lament, is we need more support from home. We need parents to work with us, because
Right.
there's only so much that we can do
Right.
here at school.
Right.
And to know that this is going to increase that interaction and that support.
Right.
Teachers themselves are
Exactly.
probably beaming when they see that the
Right.
parents are more engaged than they were, because it's a tough job being a teacher.
Exactly.
Especially
It's
when
the
you feel like
toughest
you're
job.
on your own, when
Right.
you're on
It's
your
tough.
own. But to have the support of the community, the whole school, and
Absolutely.
the parents in particular, really enables you to make the success that you're trying to achieve.
And that's one of the things that we noticed when we started doing this, because teachers are always contacting the team about, can you look on this kid for me? So you're absolutely right about that. When they find out they have that support, they'll use it.
No question about
Yeah,
it.
well, we have to kind of wind down now, but I think your program success, which we've alluded to throughout this past 45, 50 minutes, is all itemized here, and I do suggest to our viewers that with this webcast, PowerPoint will be on the website for you to refer to. But if that doesn't inspire a school district to really take this on, to really improve graduation rates and all the wonderful things that education brings because of that, I don't know what would, but you've got to be there.
Yeah.
And there's proof. I mean, I love the evidence-based solutions where you've got
Right.
data that shows that implementing a policy district-wide, systemically, and in the community as well, with all the support, that you are going to make progress. And really, that poor teacher going to a school district that doesn't do this is going to not have a wonderful experience that a teacher going into a school district like this, like yours, where those supports are there and they can focus on what they've been taught to do, which is to teach.
Right.
Yes. So this is something I want to thank you for, and I don't know if I know we're pushing here because of the time.
Sure.
But do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I think really, I hope what we've shared is that it's possible and that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, that there are processes, there's a methodology, these principles you can apply to this work to attain these kinds of results. They're attainable for everyone.
Right.
So I think for me, that's really kind of, I hope, what the takeaway is. Yeah.
And for me, it's the fact that the highest recognition we can get in attendance in California anyway is, aside from a kid being successful and graduating, is the state model SARD program.
Yes.
And, that's a program that you earn. And we accomplished that. And the interesting thing about it, because they say state model program, is that every county in California through the county office, has a CWA group. Everybody who's involved in these kinds of programs, CWA, they meet monthly. And because of what we achieved with this program and how our model is being able to be replicated, now we have several in the group in Riverside County who have also earned that award.
marvelous.
Well, congratulations to you on that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's the kind of results you like to see. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
For coming and sharing this. Boy,
you're
has this
welcome.
been, we never
all-
know, but we said, this one looks really exciting. And I mean, I'm just holding me down in my chair. It is just excellent, so thank you. And
We always learn so much.
yeah, and thank
Thank
you.
you for having
It's always
us.
fun to
Good to
work with
see you
you.
again as
Yes, yes, so we've had a good time. And thank you for joining us today and giving Pat and I this front row seat at your workshop and letting us talk with you about these fantastic
having
things you're
us.
doing.
Thank you.
We're
It's
thrilled.
our pleasure. It's been fun.
Yeah. So I say farewell to you, and farewell to you, audience out there, and thank you for joining us here in Palm Springs at the conference. And so if you missed the conference, we gave you a piece of it that's pretty important. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.